fund, I think you're okay. That's
Okay.
kind of the way that I read it. I mean, we'd have a guaranteed source in the assessments plus whatever else we pick up.
Mhm.
So I think that we'd be pretty solid from what and you can pay for the canisters. Any of the work that the road department did, I would think that you could take that out of there. The buildings that Mike and Eric built, you could take that out of there. I think it would just about cover everything for the expansion of the program.
Okay, cool.
That's kind of the way I look, depending on how
Okay.
much they're interested, they're willing to go into it. And if they owe it, I think they should just try to get a loan to cover it, and then that frees up our pill. Actually, it
Right.
gives us a cushion on pills, what it does, cause
Right.
pretty
And
much.
bonds are hard, I think, because you have to have somebody that wants to buy the bonds and take that risk. I don't know with solid waste if that's how much, who the investor would wanna be to take on that risk. If the returns aren't real good,
Yeah,
you could have a hard time getting an investor to say, I wanna purchase this because I'm not gonna get any money back, or I'm gonna lose money. It's kind of it's a hard one. I just don't see anybody wanting to take on that risk with a bond.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, no, BOI would be even better because it's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah,
And the interest is pretty low.
yeah, and I think it's more attainable for us, I think, than bonds.
Yeah,
Unless you've got somebody who's got money to throw away, that's willing to take on that risk, and I just
Sure.
don't know anybody who would.
okay. All right, good. Well, that helps. Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking they only do capital, but, that's good. All right, law enforcement, they would like 2 new vehicles. I do think along with the computers and the printers, we should have a rundown of what our vehicles are and how much mileage or hours they have. We talked about that before. 159,000 has been requested, and that is to balance the budget. And I question the 19,000 going to the bars litigation. Here's the reason why. The fund is off balance by 159,000. And part of that is going to be taking money they have to give to another fund, and then asking PILT to infill that money as part of the 159,000. My question is, it seems a little, there's a lot of steps there. If the fund is not balanced, shouldn't their money be used to help balance the budget?
Yeah, I kinda understand what you're saying there, and I'm trying to think back, was it the 19,000, was that what was left over from last year's bars account? I mean,
Mason's
Mason-
account.
Mason
Well,
account?
it's part of some of, it's sitting in the public safety cash
Yeah.
as unspent.
Right,
They didn't spend the full 50,000 that they received.
right.
So it's kind of sitting in their reserves, which if they're worried about the reserves, there again, if they take that out of there, that's a little over $1 million, reducing their reserves. So it's just kind of how you look at it. Well, the idea's good. Yeah, it's like taking 19,000 and then including that and needing another 159. If you didn't give that, then they'd only need 140,000 to balance.
And, yeah.
It's a plan on the math.
And then, and I think, then directly that would impact what Corey had
Mhm. Which
figured out
impacts
for his budget.
his bills and stuff for his budget and what
Right.
comes out of there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it would almost be just easier if PILT's gonna do it, just let PILT pay the 19,000, then try to do all these ins and outs from one fund to another, and it gets muddy. And if I'm pretty sure the auditor would go look at that and say, I have issues with that. Because there's caveats with transferring from a more restrictive fund such as public safety to the general fund. The only ones that don't have the restrictions are PILT and the general fund. The others are special revenue and they have more restrictions, because that's where some of our discussion with Bill is they were spending from the detention fund to public safety. Well, by the nomenclature, it was more restrictive than the public safety, and that was a no-no. And same thing with the 30,000 that public safety gave to general fund for the wages that year. That was one of the things they told me, that was just a no-no, don't do it again. I said, well, we aren't anyway, because you're taking from a more restrictive fund, being public safety, and putting it in general fund. So I have to watch those, so we don't. And it's almost cleaner just to pay it right out of the fund itself than trying to transfer, and it gets lost in translation a little bit.
Be just easy just to take the money out of Pilt and put it into Corey's and leave this 19 in here.
And it's already in
And then
Corey's
just
because
give
it's
them
general fund.
140 out of Pilt,
Mhm,
and they still have their 159.
mhm.
And then we don't have to worry about 3 transactions to try to get money to go to the same place.
That's kind of one of those issues I like to say, that's how fraud occurs. Is when you start doing things like that, and we don't wanna go down that road. I won't go down that road, I'll fight against it. Because it does have the appearance of foul play.
So earlier, changing the subject but keeping in the same fund, earlier you said you had found an increase of $130,000 in expenditures requested.
Approximately, it's just the public's, and the deputies operating and miscellaneous, maintenance, operations maintenance, operating costs. But then some of the others, like dispatch, theirs is just wages, so there wasn't much decrease. Detention, you know, they have some, but the public safety operations covers a lot of the detention and dispatch funds. And so it kind of just jumped at me when I was looking at it, what they had budgeted last year and what they want budgeted this year was just comparing those two, just operations management, was about $130.
Was that 130,000? Are the 2 cars in that?
Part of it,
Okay, so that's the
And part
major
of it
part
was
though.
them wanting to, it was part of, it's their new cars, stuff for the new deputy at his site down there,
Oh, okay.
a few of the, why they provide the building, there's office space, office materials and things. It's more, cause it's not just here to grab, he has to have some on site.
Yeah.
So that's, and the vehicles, they say as they get older, they cost more to repair with the tires and the oil changes and those things, brakes. And when the Ford place closed and the other places are in town, I think they're a little pricier than the Ford, because they can order bigger quantities and have a lower rate than I think our smaller vendors can, and that's part of it.
Where is the money? There's CIP for new vehicles, and I think it's at $48,000. Where did that come from, do you know?
Well, some of that was insurance replacements, city donating some last year going into that, part of their interlocal agreement, I think 25,000. I think they said donations, I think fire or somebody had given them a little money to go into that, plus they haven't spent it all, so they have a little bit in there. But with insurance between the vehicles and high pursuit chases and insurances, they've had to, that's where they've been putting some of that money. And they haven't
So-
spent it, but I, off the top of my head, don't know the exact amount of what's in
Okay.
there.
So, a couple of things. With this budget, the $50,000 transfer from the Mason Moore Fund could be used for a vehicle, very easily. We have a CIP, we could easily match that or add to it to afford a second vehicle if that's what we decide to do through the process. The $159,000, I have some issues with that. One, we have a memo that went out to everybody. Everybody has obeyed that memo, and what that memo said is you will submit a balanced budget. We have a practice that goes back long before I got here that we do not use PILT to balance budgets. PILT is being asked to balance this budget. What's being said is, no, we're not gonna use it to balance the budget, we just wanna make sure that it's there. Well, when you look at what the spreadsheet says, it clearly says this budget is not balanced without the $159,000 from PILT. So, I think this fund needs to go back, they need to balance it without the $159,000. However, I have no problem working together as a team to come up with, we will put money in a CIP for your future expenses for vehicles, weapons, whatever it is, maintenance, as long as there is a plan. The request for a plan has been asked for many, many years now. We want a solid plan on how you're going to balance your budget moving forward. We've bailed out this department year after year after year. asking for PILT just to balance it at the beginning of the year, that just is going to compound the problem, because what happens next year? $159,000 is into the budget, but now we need 250. If they cannot live within their means, they need to find another source. There are grants that could be applied for. Nick, years ago, was talking about the grants that used to go to that department in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the question to him was, well, why don't they get grants now? And Nick said, because I'm no longer there to write them. Not that the grants went away. Nick and his expertise and dedication went away. There are other avenues. Bill Jaroki worked with them, and they are discussing right now a mill levy. I think that's a possibility if that's the way they want to go. We also talked about creating the J24 law enforcement district, letting the Wheatland area be their own community with their own law enforcement presence. And how do they want that to look? And then the rest of the county being a separate district, so you don't have the war between the north and the south. Those are all opportunities, but I in good conscience, and as a fiscal decision, I just don't think we can take PILT to balance a budget, especially when it goes against our policy. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, that's kind of, I agree and disagree. The thing is that they're saying that they want 159,000, and they're gonna put 100,000 of that away, but it's in here that balances their budget, so I don't know where they're gonna put it. And if they don't have it to use, then how does it balance the budget?
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So Debbie, the hundred, what'd you say was $139,000 difference in the operating? Is that what you're looking at, the subtotal of O&M plus the equipment? Is that the?
Yeah, it was just the O&M portion under the public safety for the deputies.
Cause the O&M's about $21,000 increase in equipment's $84,000 increase.
And I know, and that was another thing I need to send Brandon a note too, they had the 19,000 as part of their revenue in their budget, and it's not a revenue, it's a transfer out, so it would be an expenditure, because it's not a transfer in, because it's already in their public safety account, so that's gonna affect that bottom line anyway. And that's something I wanna talk to Black Mountain and see if I can include, if there's a way to run those reports to include those transfers out as expenditures, like the transfers in are in as revenues. Cause that's created some issues. These are two separate categories that don't necessarily show when I run those reports for expenditures. I just took the, it might be over, in the whole fund, 139. But just the deputies line item, the 410110, last year's budgeted and the new that they were proposing, that's like 103, I think. But it includes vehicles. Cause that really, to me, that shouldn't be in their public safety budget, that needs to come out of their CIP, which is not the mills, it would help their budget with not needing the mills, would help as far as bottom line, because they are getting milled money, we have to watch, that's where the reserves are important, so if they're not spending out of there and spending out of the CIP, it makes a difference in what the bottom numbers look like. So that's another thing I need to get with them, and that I don't know if Bill understood or if they understood how that works necessarily. So that's why I want to send out another email to people with their CIPs. Because they're standalone, they earn interest, they don't count as part of your operations, which is to their advantage, to spend it out of there versus your regular fund.
So when they come out of the CIP, they have to do a budget amendment on it?
If they spend out of the CIP and didn't budget, like last year, everybody had zeros to spend anything on their CIPs. If they did spend, when I did my budget amendment, I had to give them spending authority. I just had to make sure they had gotten revenue and or had the cash to cover it. But we'll dip into those reserves if they aren't watching that as well on those. That's how the airport got their new runway. We put money into their CIP, and the more money they had, the more interest it earned, which helped them build their reserves up in the CIPs, which they have no limit for, but that's how they help fund the airport. Ambulance kind of is the same way. Vehicle equipment, weapons, they have a CIP for weapons, that they wouldn't have to budget money spending out of their regular fund, but put into the weapons account. So they have that, we have vehicle, and we have a detention center CIP, that if we could get some money in the CIP for the improvements to the building versus Mike's budget or their general operating budget, makes their tax mill money go farther for the everyday operations versus CIPs for those major purchases. And it gets, I think people forget about that a little bit.
It's harder.
Yeah.
It's easier
But
to
it's out
just
of
ask
sight,
us for
it's kind of like a
pills.
savings you don't touch really often, and we kind of forget it's there, I think. Or if we see it as one, or I have a different way I have to look at it. But we kind of associate it as it's my budget and don't realize the fund numbers are what delineates the different ways they're spent, or how to look at them, and how they affect your budgets. So like if you were to donate money for new vehicles, if you put it, instead of in their revenue line item as a donation from PIL, into their vehicle CIP, that keeps some of their expenditures, because the revenue and expenditures are coming out of the CIP fund.
So that was what I was just thinking, that was my question, I was gonna ask you if we can designate that.
Mm-hmm. And
I think that's a better way of doing
It
it.
is the better way for them, because if they don't buy it, or just make do with one this year, that money sits there and earns interest. So when Doug gets the interest statements and he knows this is how much the CIPs, they get a certain portion of all that interest that's earned. So it's kind of our in-house savings, because we get interest back from the bank because they're borrowing our money. And we're not touching it, so it's sitting there.
Right.
That's kind of how he has to do with the schools, they earn interest on some of their stuff too,
Mhm.
the districts.
So even if that money, even if you did give them that, take that 100,000 from Pilt and put it into the CIP, it would draw interest until they bought the car.
Mm-hmm.
So is it, that would be better than just, because they're talking about just putting it in the fund and having it sitting there. We're better off to put it in the CIP, then at least we have it designated for the car and we also draw interest on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I think too, I know it's gonna take time to do this, but they need to get to a point where so much of their budget is part of their CIP, so that fund continues to build. When they get to that point, in 3 years, when that car needs to be purchased, that money is already there, rather than have to keep infilling it each time.
Dana did that for a while, every year, I need this much for a grader.
That's how
And
we
it
used to
sat in his road CIP, and it earned interest, and that's how he paid for a grader flat out versus a lease or something. And that was kind of the same with the cars, if we could get there, we tried, but then we had Mason's car has been tied up.
Yep.
A couple of them blow up, engines and things, deer decimates them, that's made it hard for them to get up there.
I
Because
understand
insurance, even
that.
though with the insurance, there's still a deductible, and they don't get all their money back, or the equipment to install a fresh vehicle versus I can use some of it, like you said earlier, you know, we can't always use the same stuff because the interior's changed and you can't reuse what you had. Now, the places will buy them back for people who have older vehicles, but I don't know if that's even an option. So it does make it hard. But that's the idea
Yeah.
with those CIPs.
And
That's why we have one for detention, it just
Mhm.
spend. That's why I keep trying, if you don't have to have it, don't spend it. It stays there, and then you can use it. If you do need to spend it, you can always put it in your CIP and save it for later when you buy your vehicles. Because it does take a while for them to order and get them.
It does.
We'll just like go down to the dealership and we got a car.
Right now, the CIP has $54,000 in it from the cash report.
Oh, okay.
23,000 was put in by the city last year, probably from the interlocal.
Mm-hmm.
So the balance of 31,000 is county money. Not county money, but it is, but it's not from the city. I don't think we should be using the city's money. That's theirs, that's for a vehicle that they have an agreement to buy. We shouldn't be using that in our calculations. So it leaves a balance of $31,000 in that fund today. It looks like, Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, the equipment at $84,000, 420110, it's 940 is the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're saying they need $84,000 for 2 vehicles. If we took $84,000 minus the 31, which is in the CIP, or in the cash for the CIP, that leaves a balance of $53,000. We could put that $53,000 into our bucket for special requests to be considered. And that's 2 vehicles this year for them. That needs to come out of the budget though and go to the CIP, like Debbie's saying, for best accounting practices. And 2, that is the gift from PILT versus balancing the budget. And then we can also tell people where the money went.
So one thing I think we can do here is if you guys are willing to, we can get, Brandon and Gwen here and get Bill Cherokee spreadsheet up. And just kind of move this stuff around and see how this balances out for them.
Yeah, we can do that as a team.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine. as long, yeah. Okay. I think that's fine. I want peace. I'm gonna just say it plain and simple, I want peace.
I don't know, I understand what you're saying.
Okay,
I know where you're coming from.
good. And I also wanted on the table that we do have a memo that said you need to submit a balanced budget. I know that's hard. It's hard on everybody, but almost everybody did it. So yeah, if we have to work towards a team, PILT is not for balancing budgets, especially without a solid plan. And we have a record of being incredibly generous with this department. I have no problem continuing that. I just came up with another plan to get 2 vehicles. We have to do it within a budget, within budget constraints. As long as we're on the same page as all that, and we give a verbal, then I'm willing to do your idea of working as a team on this.
Sure. Okay.
And if there's anything hanging out there that you're not comfortable with, as far as our conversation, I'd like to know it before we walk into a team situation. Because what's happened in the past is all fingers get pointed at one person, even though there's 5 or 6 in the room. And it's not right to the taxpayers, and it's not right to the county.
I think it'd give us an opportunity to go through these line items and get an explanation of what they feel their increase is.
He kind of touched on that,
Yeah.
but I am not in the detail
Right.
for some of those.
Mhm.
And I know utilities, and right now that's gonna be a big unknown, because we're still working on some of that with the city. And it's gonna impact all of us, our water sewer, for all of us that share in that in the courthouse, or, that's gonna affect all of us, and so I know they're,
Well, here's the thing, though.
but,
We spent a lot of money to
Yes.
get Bill Jaroki
Yeah.
here to educate them on how to balance their budget. Last year, what started all the screaming fits was the fact that we were working with them on their budget. It's a new day, it's a new commission, I get that, but what did we spend money with Bill for? This was never supposed to be submitted unbalanced, and it was. And now we're gonna go line by line item through there, which is one of the things Wynn has screamed about. Well, that should have been done with Bill. So I
Well, you know,
I
if
feel
you
like
want-
it's a step.
sure. If you wanna send it back and have them resubmit it, that's fine.
I'm fine with your idea,
Yeah.
I need you to know where my hesitation
I
is.
understand.
I appreciate that.
I do. I know that Brandon has worked very hard on this budget,
No doubt.
and I wanna give him the opportunity to give us an idea of where these numbers come from.
all I have
I
to
think
do is
that's-
ask him,
I think that's
all I have to do
only
is
fair.
ask him, he'll tell me.
Why don't we put it to Brandon? If Brandon wants to work with us line by line,
Yeah,
we're good with that.
Yeah.
These are the parameters, though.
sure.
If he wants to rework it and submit a balanced budget with a list of special requests he'd like us to consider,
Right,
we're fine with that, but it's his choice. How about that?
fine with me.
Will you ask him that, Debbie, as far as, our discussion? And if you wanna send a draft to us, and we can all
Try to
force
do
it.
Something,
I mean, I don't have a problem asking that request.
I'll probably need to get with him a little bit anyway, just to clear up some of the little things I found, just glancing at it. Cause that will change what they do, and then we can fix it, and I'm hoping to have their wages done with what we talked about on Friday, with all the different changes and the bargaining and the little things, so it gives him a better idea where they're sitting with their wages. He might have that way out and what he needs, so that'll help him if he does. I just don't know where that's sitting yet. That's why I told him I wanna get to a better accurate representation for him, so he has a better idea of where it's sitting.
Sounds good. And that'll be important too.
I know that they have a small increase that's not reflected here from, based on what we've had with our union negotiations,
Right,
you know, so.
well,
And some of those little 25-cent, 10 cents don't add up,
Right.
but they do impact over the big picture.
Very good.
So the last one I have a question on that we need to address is search and rescue.
Right.
So there was an error there. Debbie, can you explain what that mistake was with the budget they submitted and how much money they have?
What they forgot to remember when they were working on their search and rescue budget is back when they were doing all the renovations to the existing search and rescue building, the trust board donated $25 with the restriction that it only be used for the building upgrades that they needed. And they hadn't spent all that yet, so it still showed they had a lot of extra money in the search and rescue reserves, in their CIP. And they don't, they only had about 3,300 from that original donation that they can use for search and rescue updates. Trust board insisted that it be spent for the building retrofits and things that needed to be done. I don't know if they want it back yet, that was a question I needed to ask Debbie next time I saw her, if they want it back when they're done, or if the sheriff's office has to request, or search and rescue has to request it be used for something else.
Gotcha.
So using it for the tracks and those other things that Brandon
Oh,
and
yeah,
Lynn
yeah.
talked about.
Okay,
It can't be used for those unless the trust board unrestricts money in the budget for that.
gotcha. Okay.
And Michelle remembered that. I kind of remembered it, but I'd forgotten. So she showed me the paper, she kept it. Because the trust board was very specific about that with us, that we put it where it could be tracked, because they wanted to monitor that, so.
Did you share that email you sent to us on that with Wynn and Brandon on the search and rescue budget?
I know for sure I did Brandon, because he responded.
Okay.
I thought I included Wynn, but I didn't hear back, so I'm not positive of that.
So if they could rework that,
Mhm.
that would be good
Yeah,
too.
I think he was going to.
Okay, and that's pretty easy. All right,
That changes what they look at.
okay,
Yes, Tim.
thank you.
Just a quick clarification, trust board keeps getting mentioned, not to be confused with the Canyon Ferry Trust Board. Which trust board are you talking about?
The Broadwater County Trust Board?
I don't think it has been mentioned today, has it?
The only
We didn't
trust
talk
board I'm
about it.
aware of, Broadwater County Trust Board, that's the only one I know of. If there's a
And they'll
Canyon Ferry
be-
Trust, that's a name I don't recognize.
And they'll be submitting their budget with the hospital district board next week, the 17th.
I know Debbie has been in our office asking about it, but if the Canyon Ferry is the same as the Broadwater Trust Board,
Well, again, I
It's-
just
yeah.
didn't know for sure which one you talked about, for sure, and how the Canyon Ferry would be included in it, did not make any sense, so that's why I asked.
Canyon Ferry Trust Board is
Totally
separate,
separate, yeah,
is not related to the Broadwater Trust Board.
okay.
I-
And again, I didn't know what trust board you were talking about, that's why I asked the question, thank you.
Because I don't know the other one, something on my mind I know is the Broadway Trust, so. Keep myself clear.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, 130 Economic Development Administrative and Grant for Weekend Infrastructure.
So we'll make sure you guys know what we're talking about here. Commission, we're Brian Obert with MBAC.
Aeroside and sticker to bring back.
So the activities that are going on right now, or being proposed to be going on in Wheat, Montana area, and the demographics of Broadwater County allow us, if interested, to apply for Federal Economic Development Administration grants for upgrades or creation of infrastructure that can help to create or retain jobs. We have been working on the Bridger Brewing process or project in addition to working with Wheat, Montana and some of the other businesses in the area on what would a public sewer system do to help to at least maintain the jobs that we have and potentially attract additional jobs to that region of Broadwater County. This is potentially a separate application from what is going on with the Targeted Economic Development District, This is an application because of our fairly high levels of poverty within Broadwater County that we do qualify for these funds. It's infrastructure grant funds. So at this point, we have been working with an engineer to at least create a preliminary engineering report that would allow us to actually apply to the federal government for these federal grants. In this case, the federal grant, at least what we're proposing, is that the federal grant would cover half of the costs of a public sewer system that would also include the roadway that goes down to this public sewer system that would be, in the end, owned likely from the water sewer district. The intent of this district is that it would be a public entity that would supply or provide sewage for the brewery and other businesses in the area, either new or existing, at some point when they choose to want to join into it. So it isn't anything that is forcing anybody to do it, but creates incentive or creates kind of a backstop of having this public system. If you aren't aware, the soils down in that area of the county have quite a few layers of clay in it, and wastewater systems can have issues. If your volume is large enough, then your clay soils start to become saturated, and then the traditional septic system does not work really well. So we have been working with the federal EDA to have this application. One of the items that it isn't required, but it's one of the items that always provides additional assistance to us, is having that the local government is in support in generalities of a public system being good for the community. There is no burden to the county to this. It is just a application that would be for the sewer system. The kicker, besides potentially bringing these additional jobs into it, is we have been working with the owners of Bridger Brewing to get property that could be used by the county for the sheriff's department and ambulance service, fire hall, and potentially public works. This application, I think kind of the kicker to it is this application would allow us to be able to create a main line that would go up past the property that we have preliminarily identified for the county. Without this grant, the scope of work probably will scale down to the sewer system and a main line kind of running between the existing businesses to Wheat, Montana and to the brewery. Then it would take time and potential businesses to be able to get that additional trunk line in. So that really is the intent at this point. For us, we're just down here to ask if the commission is interested in being supportive of a application, and that the county would be willing to have a support letter to be added into that application to the federal EDA. And if you are interested, we've put some language together that you could use as
So
sample.
I've just put together a real loose support letter that has kind of just broken down by the talking points that we had for this application. And primarily for EDA, it's the job component. We know what Bridger will be creating just in their manufacturing facility alone, but then retaining what's already been there as a long-time anchor with Wheat, Montana. And we have been told, and it's pretty well known, they have issues with their current system. So this being kind of a way to anchor those two together in terms of they have an up-to-date sewer system, and it allows for future planning and growth.
And that's, every different grantor has different interests. Federal Economic Development Administration, it is really about value-added manufacturing. They do not basically support retail-type jobs. They're not against retail jobs, but they don't support with finances infrastructure that would help to put in a Costco or something like that. They want to have a full-blown something that creates what they call good paying jobs, and specifically primary sector type jobs. Again, there will be the meeting later in the day talking about the component that could be used to pay for the other half of this. The key that we want to make sure that you understand is, since even the conversation of having a public sewer system in that area of the county, there's been multiple businesses that we have had that have started to talk to us about whether this would work for them. At this point, I mean, one was a battery manufacturer, the other was a manufacturer of basically medical products. The battery manufacturer hasn't made a decision yet. The medical products group was interested. We just can't provide enough natural gas there. I mean, we weren't even on the table until the talk that there would be a sewer system. The one that we're also trying to pursue at this point, we have 2 additional businesses that have expressed interest. One of them right now, the other one historically used to be Country Classic, which is now Dairy Gold, had put a buy-sell on some property in that area many years ago with the idea of moving the creamery milk production facility out of Bozeman to this location. They couldn't pencil out the numbers, including to do a construction of a building and a sewer system that could provide wastewater treatment for their plant. This system that was part of our PER that we are finishing up right now, this system is designed so that it can support high BOD or TSS, total solids suspended, or BOD, I forget his bio something. This system with some minimal pre-treatment can treat those types of waste. And that was part of the reason in the scheme of which system would be proposed. Instead of a traditional lagoon system, this is a treatment plant. And because of that, it can actually support higher levels of BOD, which will be seen because of the brewery, could be seen because of the bakery, and other potential businesses that we would like to try to attract to the area. Without a sewer system, I mean, there is additional interest in the area, but it will continue to lag behind other areas just because of that lack of infrastructure. So this is just a request of a support letter.
Yes, Tim?
Do you have a tentative estimation figure of the grant that you're applying for?
Right now, the preliminary engineering report is looking somewhere between 2.5 and 3.2 million for the whole, this first phase of the system, which would be the main plant, the holding lagoon after the MBR system, the roadway into it, the main line that runs between properties towards Wheat, Montana, and the spur main line, which would go past the county's property. This typically, they can go up to about half. They have a kind of a sweet spot of 1 million to 1.5 million, so we're asking for 1.5 at this point.
Does this system allow for expansion and growth on it?
Yes. So specifically on these systems, it is a full treatment plant, so it has to sit inside a building. So the building that we're designing, or is being proposed in the design, is big enough for 2 skids with the ability to add on to the building to potentially run 2 additional skids onto it. And when I say skids, an MBR micro bioreactor it basically looks like a shipping container except without the skin. So it has the tanks in it, all of the pumps. So it pre-filters, then it runs through a continuous agitation tank that has basically bugs that are eating at the solids and the sugars. Then it goes through a filter system, and actually the discharge meets groundwater or drinking water standards. So one of the things we're really trying to work with DEQ and a few others is, can we use that holding pond afterwards as potentially fire suppression? But these systems run anywhere from $275,000 to $450,000. So as demand increases, you drop another one of these. They come in, they basically rolled off on us, the skid rolls off the truck, and they're plug and play at that point. But the building will be designed for the capacity for 2, which right now would put us, I mean, the best estimates is 12 to 15 years down the road, with the ability, if a lot of growth comes in, if other businesses or high volume businesses were interested, we could add 2 more easily to the system.
So that was kind of my question, I guess. Where is that trigger point to have to add more systems? I mean,
If,
what we have now will handle the brewery.
yes, it will handle, I mean,
The businesses that are there now if they decided to jump in. Right?
exactly. So right now, as designed, if we didn't get another business there, this probably will provide enough sewage for treatment for everybody that's there for the next 50 years. I mean, and the equipment is typically designed to do that, or more. If we start to see additional businesses that are interested, if there is additional demand from some of the other individuals who would want to join the water sewer district, we probably can do well for quite a few years. It's if we get an industrial user who wants, right now Wheat Montana and Bridger are the 2 big users. And projections are is Bridger can go to just about complete production levels, which would be 60,000 barrels a year. And I mean, there's right at about 40,000 barrels is their trip point. When we did the work with Lewis and Clark Brewery, they have been designed to go to 60,000 barrels. I think they were at 27,000 barrels right now and are looking at the capacity to go to 35. That's probably where we could be within 5 to 10 years. That will be about the tipping point. Now that could potentially be another grant application to offset half of those costs, or it would be picked up by the TED or the water sewer district at that point when they trip over that.
Is there rooms and provision for residential in that or not?
Not, well, I'll come back. Yes, the system itself doesn't care. The system and the water sewer district has the ability to do whatever they would want. So if somebody upgrading some residential community came to the water sewer district and asked to be added in, that potentially could be done. Inside the proposed targeted economic development district, that is one thing that is by zoning removed from the capability inside the footprint. But as an example, if the Kim's property between Wheat Montana and the livestock auction, if that was a housing development or a workforce housing, they could petition to the water sewer district, attach, and just use that as treatment. The plant doesn't care. It likes lots of sugar, which both the brewery and the bakery create. So probably the O&M on the facility wouldn't go up much at all. I think our biggest point right now is we have a business, we have an opportunity to basically attract and keep a business in the area with the ability to create kind of a backstop for some of the existing businesses if they run into an issue or if they wanted or something came to their ability to actually increase their property, their jobs, something like that. Again, not trying to force anybody into it, but creating this as a backstop that they could take advantage of.
How would rates determine?
So on this, it comes down to rates will be one of those things that it's basically separated into 3 different buckets. You have your capital expenditure up front for the structure, for the building, the MBR system, and all of the plumbing. Then you have your O&M your power, your sugars that you may or may not have to add, and somebody that has to monitor the place now and again. What's nice in Craig and Wolf Creek, it's all done by a smartphone, so you actually, whoever's monitoring it will be seeing that all the time. And then kind of that third caveat to it is what type of a sinking fund do you want to put on the facility up front? So if it looks like you're starting to go towards that you're going to have more demand, the actual fees would be based off of, I mean, what the operation costs are, and are you trying to create a capital improvement plan that would help to offset the costs for that needed expansion? Or do you put that burden onto that next group that comes in that trips you over that mark? That would be up to the water sewer district to kind of be working with their attorneys to determine that price point. Again, every time that we can avoid some of the CapEx, the capital expenditure on this, it helps to drive down your costs. Again, working with the City of Townsend, every grant that we can get drives down the cost that the taxpayer has to pay back.
So what you're asking from us today is support for this grant, nothing more?
Nothing more at this one.
No monetary
Yep.
obligation?
Nope.
Okay,
Because again, for EDA, I mean, they always preach the kind of having the public entity aware of it, and if they can generate that support letter, I think that moves up
Yeah.
a couple points on the point chart, so to speak. And again, I mean, this is a project that's very close to, all the growth that's happening in the Gallatin Gateway. Our own EDA rep is minutes away from that. He's aware of, the way the growth is going out that way. So it does look very good if we have just even a letter of support.
so what you're asking us is, do we support jobs? And do we support our community in Wheatland? I think that's an easy couple of yeses. I'd be happy to move, if it's not too soon, that we support this letter, although I think we should put it on our own letterhead. And I guess that's it. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second the motion that we,
Okay, motion's been made and second to approve the letter for the infrastructure application for Wheatland, Montana, with it being placed on Broward County letterhead. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you
Can
very much.
send that electronically and then we can scan it back to you?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
thank you guys.
No, I have nothing to say.
Well, that'd be the first time, Steve.
I know it.
Gee.
Once in a while you gotta be quiet.
Okay, you've got a little bit of mail here. This is the Department of Health Human Services for the Silos water test bill, and then we have a Broadwater County HANS information cover sheet for public health issues, a rabies reminder. And we have a immunization task order we need to sign and report and return to the Department of Health.
An ongoing task order? I think
Yes.
so. I will move that we sign that ongoing task order.
Well, second.
Okay, motion to be made, second to assign the immunization task order, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything else to come before the commission? Ed, did you have something?
I do, if you got a couple minutes, I went to that Capital 360 meeting last week,
Oh, okay.
and this is what they sent out as far as they want to create an administrative committee, and the members on it would be BLM, NRCS, USFS, DNRC, Lewis and Clark, Jefferson County, Broadwater County, and the Helena City Manager, and they just want to make sure we have a representative from you guys that will be on this committee. And this kind of outlines what that committee is going to be doing, so. They
Thank
said
you.
it didn't have to be a commissioner, but it would be preferable,
Okay,
so that's all I had.
thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging with us for the afternoon. This looks excellent. Good.
Do you have anything else you need to come forward to me?
You know what, just these, but we can deal with them later. Oh, this one. This is just a reminder, this is, what Jerry sent us last week. And I don't think it needs any signatures, even though there are little tabs here. It doesn't
Steve,
require
are
an
you guys
update.
sticking around for the later meeting?
Probably not.
Okay.
It will pass unless you're staying. I might.
It's gonna be fun, guys.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fun.
This is just our paperwork that shows that the floodplain was updated already through the previous, process we went through.
Okay,
So he was just sending it to us as a reminder, is my
so that we
understanding.
save all that money and it goes to the growth plan.
Yeah, although that's a minor part of the grant, but yes, I like where you're thinking.
Okay, so if there's nothing else, we will adjourn at 1:56.
So, do you have closed door? We do have a closed door. I haven't had a chance to see if there is an update yet from McKinsey and, Michelle. So are you guys good with scheduling a closed door either Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
And if not,
probably
next
works.
Monday is
Thursday
probably
works
fine.
best for me,
Okay. Maybe after the department head meeting?
yeah.
Okay. That work for you, Daryl?
Sure.
Okay.
Um,
So no closed door today?
No closed door
Okay.
today. Thanks, Ann. I thought it was important to at least get it out there just in case we had to have it.